This is the part of the show where we ask our guests about musical enthusiasms, early, late and abiding, as it were. And today, really delighted to welcome Tom Jenkinson, a.k.a. Squarepusher, to First Last Everything. And I think we've dragged you...
Wakey,
dragged
Tom!
You from your bed, Tom, haven't we?
Hi, chaps.
So, are you all right? Have you got some coffee to hand or something similar?
Yeah, I've got caffeine at the ready.
Good.
Right.
We're going to talk about Feed Me Weird Things, because the 25th anniversary of which... Well, firstly, let's just say, how does that feel? 25 years since your debut long-playing record.
Yeah, it's quite hard to actually compute that, really.
I bet.
It's just sort of... I don't know, time sort of collapses when you sort of look at it, you know, from this distance, and you think it sort of seems like yesterday, and it's at the same time... an extremely long time ago.
Yeah. Well,
and there's all sorts of different flash formats of it coming out. It's not been easy to get, has it, for a while?
It's been out of print for over 10 years, I believe. Yeah. And it's not ever been available on any streaming services. Well, you know, not legitimately anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk a lot more about that record and its significance to you and wider than that very soon. But we're going to start with your the first musical enthusiasm you remember, Concrete Jungle, Bob Marley and the Wailers. When did this come into your life?
So this was the first, I would say, decent quality cassette recording I made. It was an LP. I believe it was a friend of my dad's. Left it around the house, and I managed to kind of figure out how the sort of family stereo system works and managed to kind of make a decent recording off the LP.
On the music centre, we used to call them, didn't we? Yeah.
Absolutely. It was, you know, it was more than that. It was an entertainment centre.
Right, yes.
Kind of a focal point and a wonderful thing. And... but prior to that, I was just used to having these really rough tapes, like, for example, off AM radio recordings from, 1089 Radio 1 or whatever other kind, or even worse, you know, like recordings, the speakers, you know, through a microphone. So like really super. But then that would the benefit of me, you know, being able to speak over the top of the broadcast, you know, and add my own thoughts to it.
I can remember telling me auntie and grandma to shut up at the Christmas Top of the Pops because I was recording it on a microphone on a Grundig reel-to-reel.
What kind of thoughts did you add, Tom? What kind of thoughts did you add over these tracks?
This is rubbish.
Well, this is just and I mean, what on earth is this? What are these people doing?
That's the nature of our job.
That's right, I was going to say. So,
yeah. So Bob Marley and the Wailers, I mean, this just was a sound that really hit you, was it?
I love this LP. I mean, just going back to it the other day when I was figuring out what tracks to put forward, I mean, I admit I've not really been listening to it much in more recent times, but it just blew me away. The rhythm section of the band is just like, has the momentum of a train. It's really, and the crowd, I mean, it's just joy. Yeah. I mean, especially having had the year we just had, and particularly, obviously, for me and other music fans, you know, not having any live events happening. It's been a peculiar experience in so many different ways, of course, and horrifying as well. But to kind of just, and obviously, of course, you know, that show, you know, was only known to me through this recording, but there's so much atmosphere, so much verve in it.
Okay, let's hear it. Let's hear it. Bob Marley and the Wailers, and this version of Concrete Jungle.
Concrete Jungle, Bob Marley and the Wailers from 1978, from the live album. And that's been chosen for us by Squarepusher, Tom Jenkinson, who we're talking to today, our First Last Everything guest, whose debut long-playing record, Feed Me Weird Things, is 25 years old and has been reissued in all kinds of formats with lovely...
on Friday.
Yeah, with all kinds of stuff as well. There's sleeve notes, there's ephemera, as they style it. And Tom's with us this morning. So tell us where you were at when Feed Me Weird Things comes to the attention of, well, initially, Reflex, Richard James, Aphex Twin. Can you give us a potted version of how it had come to his attention?
So it was around this time I was living in North London, and there was a pub in Finsbury Park at this point called the George Roby.
Yeah.
And beloved of gig goers of that time, and it strikes me as, I mean, I wasn't aware of it, of course, in those days, but it strikes me as a sort of venue that was probably going very strong in the punk days.
Yeah,
and it very much had that feeling, like the back room where they played the music was just, everything was painted black, sticky floor, ground stack PA, you know, beer glasses rattling when the bass gets heavy, and it's just perfect basically for a kind of, you know, a bit of a cheeky rave. So I popped over to this place several times anyway as a punter, because there's amongst other things, there was a electronic night there. It was kind of with an experimental kind of emphasis. And then, as luck would have it, I got offered a show there. It was, in fact, the first Squarepusher show, which came about after I took in first Squarepusher 12-inch to a shop in Berwick Street called Ambient Soho. And they turned out to be also the people who ran this night. So it was a nice little hookup. And fast forward to the night itself, and I was just setting my gear up and saw this kind of figure mooching about behind the where the DJ setup was, and became aware that it was Richard James. So I thought, well, that's an interesting kind of turn of events, and got on with it, did the gig, and then we got talking afterwards, swapped phone numbers, and went over to his house, played him some tapes, he made some recordings, and ended up compiling what became the album.
Right. Tell us about your love of the Cardiacs, Tom.
Cardiacs.
I mean, we're fans of the Cardiacs, both Stuart and I as well. So tell us about your love of the Cardiacs.
So it started on November the 9th, 1990. I had to look that up, to be honest. I'll be absolutely frank. I
Impressive,
didn't remember that. No, yeah. But it was. But I mean, the show was a landmark event in my sort of teenage days.
This was a gig you went to, was it?
So they played at the Chelmsford Chancellor Hall.
Okay.
On that date, I went down there with a friend. A kind of an elder brother of somebody's had recommended it, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's, you know, maybe it is kind of elder brother music. I don't know, but anyway, we went down there, and just from the off, I was captivated. I mean, it was the first touring band I saw. So, I mean, I'd done gigs, plenty of gigs of my own, but, you know, in local bands by this point. And yet this was, you know, the first act that really had that kind of proper kind of momentum. You know, they got on the stage, really looked like they belonged there.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? And really also just looked like they belonged to a different reality. I mean, the kind of, the music was obviously first and foremost the thing which blew me away, but also they're just, the demeanour on stage. I mean, as well, the keyboard player was kind of pulling this weird face that only seemed to intensify across the hour or more of how they play. I mean, like,
I think that's Bill Drake, wasn't it? Yeah. William Drake.
Was it Drake? Yeah. And but it was this. Well, as it struck me at the time, you know, this kind of peculiar sort of melting pot of like bits of fusion and art rock, but then so much energy, obviously like a punk drive, you know, like kind of underpinning the whole thing.
Yeah,
it's just absolutely thrilling.
Well, let's hear some with thoughts, of course, of the late Tim Smith. These are the Cardiacs from the On Land and in the Sea album of '89, The Duck and Roger the Horse. Under 2.5 minutes. There's so much going on.
A lot going on in there. A lot going on in there. And what a change of direction for Ed Sheeran on his new single. That's The Duck and Roger the Horse, the Cardiacs, chosen for us by Tom Jenkinson, Squarepusher, who's with us this morning. It's first, last, everything. It strikes me listening to that, Tom, that there's kind of, it's almost played, I mean, it's real people playing real stuff, but it's almost played inhumanly complex and fast. And I know you're interested in that kind of thing, aren't you? I mean, you've made a record. We talked on the Free Zone about this. You've made records where you're interested with machines, where you're interested in the possibilities of unplayable music, almost, aren't you?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the feedback from working with the machines, so that you begin to try to be able to do what they do, I think is one of the most fascinating dynamics that's possible in modern music.
Yeah, yeah. And going back, yes,
trying to absorb, as it were, like adapt techniques so that you can approximate what machines do. I mean, of course, you can never get there, but actually it leads you to a different place, you know.
Yeah.
which, you know, perhaps you would have been in the first place. Yeah.
Because your primary instrument, I'm guessing, is the bass, isn't it? You are. Is that fair to say? First and foremost, you're a bass player.
Absolutely, yeah. That's where I put most of the time.
Yeah, which is evident. And the reviews of looking back over some reviews of Feed Me Weird Things, which is the album that Warp are reissuing, 25 years old. This idea that you talk like I read a line that said, and I know Frank Zappa's someone who you're very interested in, and looms large in your work. That as he kind of satirised rock music, you're sort of semi-satirising kind of drum and bass and those genres at the same time. Is that fair enough?
This is a recent review.
I think it's on your Wikipedia page, which probably means it's wrong.
Oh, there's plenty of things that are wrong in there, but satire would be. It's an interesting one because let's be honest. You know, there's fun. There's plenty of fun. You know, in terms of like what I'm doing.
Yes.
And sometimes, I mean, I feel like satire is generally, or at least the form of satire which I probably would not associate myself with, is a vicious kind of put down.
No, not that. More like you're having fun with saying, how far can I push this? Like, you know, the complicated and the speed and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, so I think one of the elements probably that feeds into this is, if I was to try to describe that myself, I'd put it more like a cartoon mentality, like a Tom and Jerry attitude.
Yeah.
You know, it's not the only thing that's happening in my work, but like that's I think the element that we're sort of picking up on here, and it's the sort of sped up. Let's make everything go double speed and see what happens.
Yes.
You know, you know, and actually, of course, things disappear. Levels of detail become obscured, but other things appear at the same time.
Yeah.
During lockdown, a lot of us have enjoyed hearing birdsong very clearly, and on our Slow Sunday programmes, we played a lot of records, and indeed today about hearing birdsong. Someone else who was very interested in birdsong was Olivier Messiaen, which takes us to your everything choice.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because he did a lot of experiments with birdsong.
But also, but more for this is all. And did you have affiliation with organ? I read some of because of your background, your affiliation with Chelmsford, the organ in the church.
So I went to the cathedral school.
That's right.
In Chelmsford, for some reason, and I mean, one of them was that I had to go to a school, but beyond that, I wasn't really sure. But we were marched up once in a while to the local cathedral to look nice and sing, and through those experiences, I became familiar with the organ, and it was both how it looked. I mean, the sheer sort of magnificence. I mean, I think you kind of, you know, really, it's the sort of kind of instrument where you do run into these big adjectives. You know, the power and the splendor of this thing, but it was an incredible thing. You know, these gigantic and then tiny pipes making these gigantic and tiny sounds, and of course the bass. I mean, that's one of the things that this instrument does incredibly well, and actually for an acoustic instrument, I don't think it has any real parallels. This kind of floor shaking, kind of earth moving experience when it really gets going.
Wow.
So this made it made an enormous impression on me, musically speaking. And not so long ago, I was fortunate enough to be able to finally indulge that. I got commissioned to write some music for organ. Through that process, I got to know a lovely chap and an extremely talented musician called James McVinney, who went on to play this music that I composed, and then we issued a recording of that not so long ago. It's done at the Royal Festival Hall, and they're a fantastic instrument there. And but Messiaen was very much part of the story of me, but you know, learning more, not just about organ though. I mean, Messiaen has informed my whole idea of harmony. His idea of modes of limited transposition is exemplified pretty well in this work.
Yeah, well, look, we'll play Le Banquet Celeste, the Celestial Banquet. Your own copy, I believe this is, that we're playing.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a proof.
And just to remind people, Feed Me Weird Things, long unavailable, special 25th anniversary edition is out Friday, 4th of June. It's on streaming platforms which have never been before, and it's on vinyl, deluxe, case-bound book CD, all digital format, and it's brilliant. And thank you very much, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you.
Back to bed now, or are you up? Is the day started and you're carrying on? Or
yeah, I'm kind of will be kind of rubbing my eyes and seeing what happens next. Probably not very much, to be honest.
Cheers, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Bye.
take care.
Bye.